Hey guys, Bump here, bringing you this Shadowlands DPS Death Knight 9.0.5 patch review. You might have seen that the official patch notes have gone up, so I thought I was going to make a video, take a look at what exactly changes with the DPS Death Knights and what the implications of those changes are. We have a couple of Covenant changes and some Legendary changes, but nothing too massive, nothing too impactful, and I will get to that later. But overall, things haven't really changed. I won't recommend anyone to swap Covenants. I don't think that the Covenant meta has changed or that we'll see someone playing other Legendaries. Right, to start off, we have some very nice buffs to the Necrolord Fleshcraft ability. So that used to be rather underwhelming. You used it pre-pull and then kind of used it within a boss fight if you had the opportunity, like Council, right, when you're dancing. It now provides 20% damage reduction when channeling, and this is absolutely huge because this actually makes this ability useful in PvE settings. It's like having an additional Icebound Fortitude, however you need to channel it. But imagine you are progressing Sludge Fist Mythic, you can use Fleshcraft to get some nice damage reduction when he charges into a pillar, for instance. It's actually useful, and it's really nice to see this being buffed. Furthermore, with the Fleshcraft, it kind of have this new passive, which means that when you run across dead enemies, you consume them and it reduces the cooldown of Fleshcraft by 1 second. The buffs you could get in Plaguefall now work with this passive consuming. So you no longer need to run into a dead slime and then press Fleshcraft to get the buff. You now just need to run over the body and then automatically the buff will be applied to you. This is a huge quality of life improvement and will make us generally better when running Plaguefall. Furthermore, the Marilith Soulbound, the first ability that gives you stats depending on what you run over, that also required you to channel Fleshcraft, no longer does, so it's just passive, which makes it a bit better overall. I wouldn't recommend people swapping to Marilith though, it's rather underwhelming overall. Right, for Kyrian, we have a buff to Shackle the Unworthy, 15% more damage, and the damage reduction is up from 5 to 8%. This is kind of nice. I feel like the devs kind of realized that Kyrian is underplayed with Death Knights, so they buffed that to help out. This is a 0.3%-ish overall buff, so it's quite small, but it's still nice. For Frost Death Knights, it will make Kyrian even better for pure single target. For Unholy Death Knights, it will kind of bring in the gap between Kyrian and the other ones, but it won't kind of change the ranking. So I don't feel like I wouldn't recommend anyone to swap for Kyrian just because of the change, but it's nice that it's closer, right? We want them to be as close together as possible. Finally, the last Covenant change is that Night Fae Death Stew has been buffed, and quite significantly. It now stacks up twice as fast, so for Unholy, every Scorch Strike gives you 2 strength instead of 1% of strength, and for Frost, a 1 Obliterate gives you 2% instead of 1%. This is really quite nice because popping down Death Stew in single target, it's really tricky to get the full value out of it. So overall, you will generally get twice as much strength in pure single target from Death Stew-ish. This was really needed because single target is where Night Fae was lacking, and it kind of also closes the gap a little bit between dual wield and two-hander for Frost. As you might know, dual wield Frost stacks up Death Stew twice fast, just normally because you have 2 weapons and you get 2 Obliterate hits every time you hit it. But now, when you're using a two-hander weapon, you can actually get a viable amount of strength on single target. Same thing as with Kyrian, this won't bring Night Fae into like the meta for Unholy. It will just become closer, which is nice. So whoever didn't play Night Fae before because the single target wasn't up to par, they can kind of comfortably swap over, knowing that at least, you know, it's 0.5% better now, right? For Frost, Night Fae is still a solid pick. It's even more solid now. So previously it was lacking a little bit in single target. Now it's a tiny bit better. But I won't recommend anyone to just swap to Night Fae because it is just a tiny bit better, but it's also quite nice. Finally, we have 2 legendary buffs. For Unholy, we have the Reanimated Shambler. the damage here is buffed by 5% and the proc rate by 17%. I'm quite surprised that they kind of chose to buff Reanimated Shambler. It's the passive legendary, which people can run if they don't want to have a legendary that impacts the rotation in a way. I don't think this buff is enough to kind of topple, for instance, Monstrosity as to go to Myth Plus legendary. It's just a nice change, and for who's running this legendary, it's nice for you, right? You can technically run this legendary as Frost as well, but it's not good enough to be competitive with the Frost-specific legendaries. Finally, we have Pheromones. It has been buffed for blood decay. This can be a bit confusing. It used to be 7.5 haste percentages. Now it's 10%. This is indirectly a buff to both Frost and Unholy, because it makes the legendary better overall, right? So if you want a legendary that works for all specs, Pheromones is one of the good options. It's either Pheromones or Super Strain you choose generally. So Pheromones now work better for blood, which means that if you have it for Frost Unholy and use it for blood as off spec, it's a good change for you. But it won't become meta just because of this buff, because as I just said, it has the same haste for Frost as Unholy as before. It's only buffed for blood. Alright, so that was all the changes. As you might have heard, nothing really changes in a significant manner for us. The meta stays as it is. It's just that things get closer together, which is just generally nice changes, right? I don't recommend anyone to swap legendaries. I don't recommend anyone to swap covenants because of these changes. As always, do leave a comment down below if you have any questions, if you have anything to say. You can always find me on Acro's Discord or on Twitch when I stream on Wednesday and Sunday evenings. That's EU time, by the way. Do leave an upvote or downvote, depending on what you thought about this video, and do consider subscribing if you want to see more of this kind of content. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more content. Thank you.